Hi everybody, this is Daniel Gray. I am the TrailerPark Prophet, broadcasting live from Crestone, Colorado on Blog Talk Radio. This is Loco Friday. Thanks a lot for being here. I really appreciate it. We got snow here in Crestone. I bet we got 6, 7, 8 inches, and it looks like it's still snowing as we speak, and there's something about that first day of snow. I don't know what it is, but there's something romantic about recognizing the change of seasons and what that means for your future. And the classic battle of man against nature. That's what you're up against when you live in a 4-season environment, which generally means you have to live at altitude. And Crestone, I think it's anywhere between 8,000 and 10,000 feet. They have 14ers. In fact, Mount Crestone, I can see it. Well, I can't see it now. It's under cloud right now. But you saw it Monday or Wednesday. If you were here Wednesday for the show, I hope you saw it. I didn't check the screen to make sure you could see the Mount Crestone, but I'm right here, Crestone, Colorado. And Crestone is known worldwide as a spiritual center for almost every religion or belief imaginable. And it's interesting because there are people who visit Crestone from all over the world. And most particular, there's a religious organization from Japan. And their name escapes me, but I'll tell you in the future what it is. And I believe I don't know what they're based on. It's not Buddhism. I don't believe it's Christianity, but they have a presence here, and they must have a lot of money, this religion from Japan, because they built a huge worship center, and a lot of people from Japan have come here and bought property, and they're just one of many. The Buddhists are here, the Hindus, the Catholics, the Baptists. There's some Muslims here. In fact, when I was living here in Crestone back in, I believe it was 2000. I moved to Crestone in 1996, and I stayed here until 2005. But at one time, there was a woman, a Jewish woman, who was married to a Muslim guy here in Crestone, Colorado. And she decided that she was over the relationship and wanted a divorce. And you don't divorce in Islam. And sure enough, this guy, this Muslim here in Crestone, Colorado, ended up stabbing this girl to death, or maybe he shot her, I can't remember, and then he killed himself. And I'll never forget, I was one of the last people to see this young woman that got killed by this Muslim in Crestone. She was down at the park where I spent a lot of time. The park is just right down from my house here in Crestone. And I was down there playing basketball. I had the goats down there and my dog Bailey Barker, and she came down and was hanging out for a little bit, and I talked to her. I was one of the last people to talk to her, and I could sense that something was amiss. And I think she sensed the same thing too, because we'd spent time together before, and it was never, any kind of tension or anything. We just had a nice little relationship, friendship. But that day, it just seemed like both of us had this kind of premonition that the world wasn't right. And sure enough, she went home, and this guy just ended up. I guess the story was she went home, and this Muslim guy showed up with a bottle of wine and some roses. He was going to try to romance her back into the relationship, and she rebuffed him, and so he killed her dead. Because he was Muslim. He felt disgraced. In Islam, if a woman can't decide to leave a man. There's no way. That's a crime against Islam, and it's punishable by death, basically. And so that's what this guy was doing. He was carrying out this right of pride that he got from Islam. Crazy deal. So anyway, I'm back in Crestone. It's beautiful. I'm glad to be back. It's an interesting experience to live in a town or move into a town and live there 8 years of your life and then move on and be gone 8 years and then come back. It's interesting because you have so many memories in this town, and a lot of people have left, a lot of people have moved on, a lot of people have grown up and created their own little families and their own businesses. So a lot of change has happened in 8 years here in Crestone, or any community for that mind. And yesterday, Bailey Barker and I went out to the Crestone Cemetery. I love cemeteries. I absolutely love cemeteries because they're a piece of history, and they mark a place and time and the finality. I love the finality of the graveyard and junkyards where cars and trucks go to die. There's something about the finality that I have some sort of a romantic attachment to. And I saw several graves that I remember from when I left back in 2005, and then there were the new gravestones where people I knew had died and moved on, and that was emotional because I had a connection with these people, I had a relationship with these people, and now they're dead, and it's part of the human experience. I get that. Yeah, it's a very personal thing. You go to the gravesite, you read the names, and you think about the memories, and you realize that those were just passings in time. Interesting. So anyway, been really enjoying being back in Crestone, seeing a lot of people I haven't seen in a while, and it was good to see them. Nice to catch up on what's been going on in Crestone and get filled in on the latest chit chat and gossip. I always like that. I love to gossip, one of my favorite things to do. So anyway, enough of Crestone. Since this is Local Friday and all politics is local, let's not do that. Let's talk about John Kennedy. I have some comments I want to make about what's going on in Gunnison. They have a situation with immigration, and there was a big 2-page story on immigration in Gunnison, and we'll get to that. But it really makes me angry, so I'd rather move on to something. I just got done prepping for the show, reading the Gunnison Country Times, and the lead article, or the biggest article in the Gunnison Country Times this week is about immigration. And some of the progressive socialists and illegal aliens had themselves a little demonstration in Gunnison. And all of it was about guilt-tripping people that these poor human beings from Mexico primarily have to endure the life of an illegal. And they're just playing the victim card. And it makes me angry, and I don't want to talk about it right now, but we will talk about that later on in the show. I promise you. Oh, yeah, and by the way, if you want to call in, I would love to take your call. The number here is 646-716-8506. Again, that's 646-716-8506. And I got to tell you, I'm now on YouTube. I have my own channel. It's at Daniel Gray, and I'm getting a lot of hits. People are interested in the show. So if you're listening on YouTube, remember that the Trailer Park Prophet is live 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So don't try to call into the show if I'm not here. I know sometimes people get confused, or at least I know some prophets that get confused sometimes. Oh, you know what? Let me check. I just realized I put that pillow down, and I'm sorry I didn't shave. I mean, I told you I moved my fifth wheel from Delta to Crestone, and I haven't been keeping myself up like maybe I should. But I'm not the most attractive guy in the world, but anyways, moving on. I wanted to talk about the 50th anniversary of John Fitzgerald's Kennedy's assassination, JFK's. 50 years. And everybody's been talking about it for the last 3 weeks. You know, it's a big story. And I have to admit, I was really young during this time. I think I was 11 years old. I think that's right. See, he was shot. When was Kennedy shot? I'm trying to remember what that day was. It's 50 years ago. So if it's 2013 minus 50 is 3, 5, 9. 1953, that's not right. Oh, anyways, 50 years, 3. All right, anyways, it's been 50 years since Kennedy got shot. And here's one of the things he said that I thought was kind of interesting. It says, change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past are certain to miss the future. Rather brilliant words from our president, John Kennedy. And I guess I just wanted to tell you about basically how I feel about John Kennedy. John Kennedy is not your professor's Democrat. John Kennedy was a fiscal monetary conservative, and he was a social liberal. But he was very much a economics guy. He was very much a business guy, and he was in favor of lowering taxes, and he did during his term to get the economy going. The basic trickle down theory that the liberals like to portray it as, and I hate trickle down. It's called supply side economics. Supply-side economics says that if you reduce income taxes, you'll put money in the hands of people, and they'll go out and invest it and spend it, and that there'll be a multiplier effect in the economy, and the economy will improve. That's supply-side economics. Every time I hear trickle down, that came from the progressive socialist movement. That is one of many in a long line of word usage and finding certain words and demonizing them and then attaching them to your opponent. That's what that is, trickle down. is just that. It's supply side economics. And any professor that says trickle down, you should raise your hand and go, Professor, trickle down is slang. What you're really criticizing is supply side economics, which, by the way, John F. Kennedy, our president, was a supply sider, sir. God damn. It's amazing. I mean, we as conservatives in this country are having to fight battles that have lasted for 50 years. It's incredible. And my point is that John F. Kennedy would not be able to get elected as President of the United States from the Democratic Party. You know, the Democrats are always out there saying, well, Ronald Reagan couldn't get elected today, and that's propaganda. That's all that is. And that's to soil a few minds out there against the Republican Party so they can say, oh my God, the Republicans are crazy, they're radicals, they're terrorists, they're extremists, because they want to have balanced budgets. Oh my God, imagine that. And so it's the psychology of politics at play constantly in almost every word they use. It's just the way things work in politics today. The Democrats are the ones, though, that are constantly on the hunt to put down any progressive socialist that or the progressive socialists are always on the hunt to put down any conservative or Republican that they can. And I've mentioned this before, but I want to bring this up again. And that's why within the cult of progressive socialism, if one of the sycophants of the group goes out and lambasts a conservative or Republican, it's like bringing home a scalp to the tribe. You're going to get credit and a pat on the back and public recognition. And it doesn't matter if what you said is true or if you did it in a harsh, crude, offensive manner. It doesn't matter. As long as the person who was the subject of your wrath was a Republican or a conservative or a Tea Party, that's all that counts. Just the ugly, mean nature of the progressive socialist rhetoric. As long as you were out there perpetrating that hate, trying to demonize the opposition of the progressive socialist movement, you're a hero. But JFK, there is no way in hell JFK could get elected as the Democratic nominee for president. No way in hell. And I'm almost certain he wouldn't have been for Obamacare or something like Obamacare. He wouldn't have gone in there and totally taken apart 1/6 of the economy. Speaking of the healthcare industry, is 1/6 of the economy. He wouldn't have been for that. He would have been for tax cuts. He was definitely against the communists, for Christ's sakes. You look at this president today, he's in bed with the communists. He's in bed with China. He's in bed with Russia. Well, as much as Putin will allow him in the bed, but he's embraced dictatorships, this president has, all over the world. No way in hell would JFK carry on negotiations with Iran like this president is. No way would John Kennedy say that it's time that we embrace the Muslim world and the age of speaking ill of Muhammad is over. In fact, we should actually go to this one thing from JFK. I should play this for you, because this is something that I used to play in the show a lot. And this is actually a speech from JFK he gave about, let's see, JFK. He talks about these nefarious forces in the United States, forces that that go unseen, yet have connections and control over more and more aspects of American society. And in my mind, he never really comes straightforward and tells us what that means. They're called the secret societies. Let's listen to this, though. This is something that I think would be more apropos for the anniversary of JFK's assassination. 50 years. God, that's I guess I was 9 years old. I was just trying to remember how old I was. 9 years old. And I want to tell you my story because I think it's kind of a good one. I think
now in theaters, the biggest surprise of the season. You're the Pop.
I mean, everybody has a story about where they were when JFK got killed. You know, it's one of those things, I guess you would know. I hope you never have to know that. A lot of us can feel that way about 9/11. And that was a horrific thing, and I don't dare compare the two. And yeah, I guess they are the same, because I remember. Well, hold on here. Let's do this. Let's listen to this famous speech by JFK.
Let both sides seek to invoke the wonders of science instead of its terrors. Together, let us explore the stars, conquer the deserts, eradicate disease, tap the ocean depths, and encourage the arts and commerce. Let both sides unite to heed in all corners of the earth the command of Isaiah to undo the heavy burdens.
All right, that's not going to work.
And let the oppressed go free.
Oh, there it is. Look, you guys can see it.
And if a beachhead of cooperation may push back the jungle of suspicion, let both sides join in creating a new endeavor, not a new balance of power, but a new world of law, where the strong are just, and the weak secure, and the peace preserved. All this will not be finished in the first 100 days, nor will it be finished in the first 1,000 days, nor in the life of this administration, nor even perhaps in our lifetime on this planet. But let us begin. In your hands, my fellow citizens, more than mine, will rest the final success or failure
All right, this isn't working out so good. So we'll change gears here. That was John F. Kennedy's inaugural address back in 1963, I believe. And he's a great guy. I love this man. It's funny though. You look at the background here in 1963, and there's like 3 different men that are still wearing top hats, the black top hats. It's just strange. I mean, fashion is such an interesting thing. Oh wait, I was gonna do that one video, but I guess I'm not gonna do that now. All right, let's see. Oh, I wanted to tell you here. Let me check, make sure I got this camera working right. I wanted to tell you my story about the day JFK died, and I was 9 years old. I was in Tucson, Arizona. We were living in our second trailer park in Tucson, Arizona. We lived in 2 different trailer parks in Nevada. One in Las Vegas, and one in a town called Henderson. But all in all, I probably lived in 15 different trailer parks during the 60s during this time, because we would move from town to town. My evil stepfather was a pipe fitter welder, which meant he generally worked on power plants or gas lines or refineries, and he would move us 14 times, or how many times we moved inside of like 10 years, or 7 years rather. We would move from town to town to town to town, and that in and of itself is a story. I could talk about that all day, but I'm just trying to set the scene here a little bit. So I'm 9 years old. I'm living in this strange town. I was new to the school. It was in Tucson, Arizona, and it was a Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday. Yeah, I think back then it was a Wednesday, or maybe it was a Friday. It might have been a Friday, yeah, 50 years ago. I guess it might have been. At any rate, I was sick. I was sick the day John Kennedy died. I had the flu. And the school nurse who I was sent to diagnosed me as having the flu and wanted to get me out of there as quick as possible for the health of the students and the staff. And so she called my house to talk to my mom. No one's home, no one's home, no one's home. And finally they decided, well, why don't you just walk home? Because you live down the road a piece, and just go straight home and have your mother take care of you. And so down the road I went, and I got home, and by the time I got home, the school had got in touch with my mom, and she was there, and she was in a big hurry, and she was all dressed nice. Something was going on, and she made me some Campbell's tomato soup and a piece of bread, I think, and some saltines. That generally was one of my major regular lunches there under that roof, and left me on the couch in the living room. And I had this coffee table next to me with my milk and my tomato soup, which I loved. Campbell's tomato soup, excellent, I love it. And she threw a blanket over me and said goodbye. She took off and left me there all by myself. And so I started watching. I can't remember who I was watching at that time. And this time of day, I think it was somewhere around noon. That's why she probably fed me. At any rate, I'm sitting on the couch watching TV, and Walter Cronkite interrupts the show. And Walter Cronkite is one of the first, if not the first, big-time network anchormen in the country at this time during the 60s. And he breaks into this show I'm watching to announce that JFK had been killed. And I remember thinking at the time that this was unbelievable. How could this be happening? And Cronkite was on there, and he actually seemed kind of rattled and in the moment. And news in those days, of course, was in black and white, but news wasn't readily available like it is today. But still, remember, they had phones for some 50 years, so information was trickling in from Dallas on what happened. Because Walter Cronkite came in to my living room and told me, with my little napkin covering my shirt, my Campbell's soup bowl in my hand. I mean, he came and told me and the rest of the world that JFK, the president, is dead. Dead. Not injured, dead. And it was a feeling that the world has gone mad. And what does this mean? How is this going to change things? Who could do something as dastardly as this? Why President Kennedy? They really were the darlings of America. People really loved JFK. Even Republicans loved JFK. He was a good man. He was a reasoned man, and he did what was right for America. He was the least political president that we've had in years. And he was dead. And then we saw the pictures of the casket being loaded off the hearse onto the plane, onto Air Force One, the casket carrying the President of the United States, JFK, being loaded in to Air Force One. We all saw that. And we saw Jackie Kennedy, who still, I think, at this time had blood on her dress. She did. She had blood on her dress from her husband, JFK, who had just been assassinated. We saw that. We were the first generation in the history of mankind to actually witness a world disaster, a world not catastrophe, or, how do you call that? I mean, it affected the world. It affected us more, of course, but it was a big deal. Everybody understood. It was a big deal. Everybody was feeling a loss. I was feeling a loss. Although I was more just dumbfounded. More than anything else. I was just kind of dumbfounded. And it wasn't until later, when Bobby Kennedy died and Martin Luther King got shot and Malcolm X, I was thinking to myself, oh my God, has the world gone mad? Is this only the beginning? Horrible. It was a horrible event. And we watched it on TV. We watched everything. In fact, I remember, if I remember correctly, we actually watched JFK's funeral at school. In fact, now that I think about it, we did. Just like we watched when Gemini took off for Apollo. Well, we watched Gemini take off in the classroom, and we watched the Apollo mission 2 take off into space. And that's right. I remember in class 2 watching when Armstrong and Young or whoever were on the moon for the first time. I saw that in real time at school. And talk about an experience that was. Oh my goodness. That really felt like you were up close and personal. And it was a personal experience for all of us. The moon landing and the death of Martin Luther King and the death of Bobby Kennedy and, of course, the death of John Kennedy. Huge losses. Huge. No one could escape being affected by assassination of a president. Everyone's affected. Absolutely everyone was affected. Even people that disagreed with John Kennedy, they still liked and respected John Kennedy, because unlike this president we have today, John Kennedy was really close with Congress and the Senate, and he made an effort to work with both sides of the aisle, and he was truly a statesman, unlike President Obama. President Obama is not a statesman. He's a punk. He's a bully. John Kennedy had regular meetings and dinners and social gatherings with both sides of the aisle. And because what John Kennedy said was really the truth. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. And I'm of a mind that JFK really meant that. And then you look at President Obama today, he's increased the size of government 24%. That's not asking your country to do what they can for your country. That's asking your country what they can do for you. Exact opposites are JFK and Barack Hussein Obama. Exact polar opposites. So when you hear the progressive socialists say, oh, Reagan couldn't get elected to be the Republican nomination for president, he wouldn't even be recognized in the party today because they're more conservative than they ever were. And that is straight up propaganda. That's not true. And not only is it not true, but even if you look at it logically, you can't predict something like that. That's fiction. That's fallacy. That's faith. Anyone that makes those kind of comparisons using somebody that's dead and setting up hypotheses like that, that's totally illogical. And in a way, it's kind of being ridiculous if you really want to get down to it. That analogy is ridiculous. But then if you want to say, okay, go ahead and say that, just look at the other side and look at JFK. There was no way JFK could get elected as the Democratic nominee to represent this Democratic Party in 2016. He is conservative. JFK, by today's standards, is conservative. He believed in balanced budgets. He believed in transparency. He believed in doing or initiating legislation through general orders, not through special orders like they do today. All right, let's see what else we got here. I'm not going to do that story. Let's see, how do I want to go here? Let me do this. I got a little something here I want to do. I meant to talk about this on Friday. Or on Wednesday. I guess I did actually have some notes from Wednesday. I wanted to say, or give my respects to two miners who recently died in Ouray, Colorado. I don't know exactly what kind of mine it was. I don't know if it was coal. It was probably coal. But two miners died at Ouray, Colorado a couple days ago. Two others were in the hospital. And I want to send out some good thoughts and ask you to send out some good thoughts to these two miners' family. And I want to just remind everybody how much we all enjoy the attributes and the development of coal and minerals, and how it's enriched and modernized our lives and given us more time to be free and pursue things that are our passions rather than just feeding ourselves. But I want to extend a thank you to all the families of miners and of course all the miners out there who are really in some instances risking their lives in order to bring home a paycheck to their family. And each and every one of us in society enjoys a better quality of life because of mining. Moving on. Oh, this is kind of funny. I like this story. And I've wondered this myself a few times. And I don't know if this is necessarily sexist, but someone was doing a piece on TV. I saw this here recently. And the gist of it is, do women have dreams about their man and wake up mad at them? And evidently there's something to it, that a woman can actually have a dream about her man, and it could be that he's cheating, or she doesn't like the way he's been, in her dream, she doesn't like the way he's acting at work or at the gas station, who knows what. But evidently women do have dreams about men, that makes sense, but they see their men in their dream acting out in a way that the woman finds unattractive. And the woman wakes up in the morning and has that essence of her man being unattractive in her mind. And evidently, it can influence her behavior with her man when she wakes up. She could be a little peeved at him, or disappointed, or angry, or whatever emotion a woman can harbor against a man. But evidently, there's research to suggest that this is actually a phenomenon. So men can be in trouble just because their image acted out in such a way in their woman's mind. And I guess it's just kind of a wake-up call to men out there, that the woman you wake up with may not be the woman that you went to bed with in the evening. And I guess women need to recognize this too, because women must know that this is happening. Maybe not all of them. Maybe some of them. Maybe they don't care. I'm not really sure, but it's quite a phenomenon. You got to really look at the female creature with just marvel. You know what I mean? Absolute marvel. Because if a woman is this complicated, you have to admire that. That is definitely a quality worthy of admiration. But men, so if you wake up and your woman has kind of changed over the night, you might want to remind yourself of this female phenomenon and somehow edit your response appropriately. I guess that's all you can do. And I wonder, is this true with lesbians? I wonder if, and I would guess it would have to be. I imagine that this is what a woman feels about her mate. And if her mate is a female, I mean, it would have to be the same thing. So that she could be having this bad dream about her lover being with another lesbian. Well, it'd have to go that way too. And then what would be even worse? What if two lesbians in the same night had bad dreams about the other one? Now that is a recipe for disaster. Or can I dare say a cat fight? Two cats. I'm sorry, that's being small-minded. But I would imagine it would happen. I mean, that's what my mind says, that could actually happen. Anyways, want to keep you in the loop. Oh, we did this story about the Colorado Nasal Ranger. Did I do this quote? I love this quote. If I did do this Wednesday, I apologize. No, I didn't do this Wednesday, but I might have done this Monday. But this is a quote from Ayn Rand. And it's almost more of well, I'm going to read it to you because it's just profound. It says, most men spend their lives in fruitful rebellion against things they cannot change, in passive resignation to things they can, and never attempting to learn the difference, in chronic guilt and self-doubt on both counts. I find that amazing. What an observation of the human condition. This is by Ayn Rand. Most men spend their lives in futile rebellion, I instantly thought of myself. I always been fighting against the man and town hall and what like. But it, you know, it reminds you of what is his name, John Chiavolti fighting the windmills. Frugal rebellion against things they cannot change, and passive resignation to things that they can. Passive resignation. And never attempting to learn the difference. The chronic guilt and self-doubt on both counts. Chronic guilt. Chronic guilt is one of the passions that is utilized by the Catholic Church, and also chronic guilt is how the progressive socialists, in particular the environmentalists, are able to get their hooks into a person's psychic, using this chronic guilt that somehow everyone on planet Earth is here and they're damaging Mother Earth just by their mere presence. The environmental movement is big on guilt, and as I mentioned, now that they're using climate change, every time there's a natural disaster, they're attributing that to global climate change, and of course it's caused by mankind using fossil fuels, which means indirectly you are part of the problem. You are killing people out there, you energy consuming human units, but it's that chronic guilt. And I got some other stories, but this chronic guilt is a big motivator in politics, and I think it's the reason why so many white people voted for Barack Hussein Obama, because they wanted to somehow baptize themselves from the original sin, the chronic guilt of being white, and somehow being responsible for slavery and the wrongs of many generations past. A lot of people in American society have this chronic guilt. And I feel that a substantial segment of the population felt that they were able to somehow cleanse their soul of this white guilt by voting for Barack Hussein Obama, who ironically is half white. Chronic guilt. Obamacare death spiral. Oh, the Obamacare death spiral. In case you don't know what that is, Obamacare needs to get all of the young people, the millennials, you probably already know this, enrolled in Obamacare, because they're the healthiest segment of society. So basically, Obamacare needs their money, and of course, this young demographic, the millennials, 18 to 35 roughly, are not going to use a lot of health care resources. So Obamacare needs at least, they keep saying 7 million of these millennials, but I think it's got to be more than that. I think the population of millennials is bigger. But the Obamacare death spiral, and what has many Democrats worried, is that these millennials aren't going to sign up for Obamacare. Why could they? I mean, why would they? They're going to go ahead and pay this year $80 fine, or next year the $80 fine, or whatever it is, and then keep paying the fine until they're forced onto the system. And that's the way Obamacare is designed. But if young people, or the numbers were put together when they were putting the numbers together, they figured, the Obama administration figured, that these millennials would have been more than happy to sign up for Obamacare. They actually thought millennials would be gleefully signing up for Obamacare. Well, they're not. And that was a huge miscalculation by the Obama administration to think that the millennials were going to sign up for Obamacare in droves. So the death spiral is, if these young people don't sign up, which they're not, there's not going to be enough money to make the numbers work. And the reason I brought this up is this is what's going to happen. I brought this up weeks ago, and now I'm starting to see it come up in the news and on the internet and stuff, and that is because of this death spiral of the insurance companies, because of the millennials not signing up for Obamacare, the federal government is going to wind up bailing out the health insurance companies. The insurance companies are going to have to be bailed out to the tune of billions of dollars. No one even really has a good estimate. But it's clear. The more people that sign up into Obamacare and that are older and needy of more health care than these millennials, they're going to drag the system down. That's part of the spiral too, because what's happened so far is most of the sign-ups to Obamacare actually signed up to Medicaid, which means Medicaid's going to have to be bailed out. And then the majority of the others that signed up on the state exchanges are the people who either have pre-existing conditions or the elderly. So the whole dynamic, as far as the numbers go with Obamacare, is what's being described as the Obamacare death spiral. It's all going to come tumbling down. And then we're going to have to wind up borrowing more money from future generations or from China or God knows where else, or have the Fed print some more money to bail out Obamacare. This is going to be the biggest financial disaster in the history of mankind by a factor of probably 100. Because remember, Obamacare was supposed to only cost $900 billion over 10 years. $900 billion over 10 years. And it was reported back at the first of the year that those projections had changed from $900 billion to $1,800 billion, almost twice as much as originally projected. And so now it's probably a $1 trillion shortfall over 10 years at least. That's additional money that the federal government is going to have to come up with on and beyond all of the new premiums that all these companies are collecting. This is going to be, this is just completely dismantling our healthcare system. And it's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse. All right, let's see what else. So Congress, before they go on recess again, have to come up with an additional $25 billion to extend unemployment benefits for 24 million people. They need another $25 billion extension to pay for an additional, or maybe this is the total number of people that are getting workers unemployment right now, unemployment insurance, 24 million. And remember, they extended the amount of time these people can stay on for 90 weeks. And then what those people have been doing is getting on to Social Security disability. In fact, if we have time, I got a story about that here, that the numbers for Social Security disability are skyrocketing. And guess how much we spent on unemployment during the Obama administration? Well, in case you don't know, that number is $500 billion that we the people have spent so far on unemployment insurance. $500 billion. $500 billion on unemployment insurance. And I think I told this story before. This is one of my favorite stories. When I was down in Costa Rica, I went down to Costa Rica every year for like 6 years. and spent the winter because I was tired of being cold, and I wanted to do something after my first dog died, Bailey Barker the first, and so I would go down to Costa Rica every winter. And now I can't even remember what I was going to tell you. I forgot what I was going to tell you about Costa Rica. Oh my God, that's not good. At any rate, I would go down to Costa Rica, and one year I rented a condo on the beach, and another time I was way up in the mountains, and then I spent most of my 6 years down there in a suburb of San Jose called Escazú, and I would take the bus into Escazú, and I was an actor at the little theater group. But at any rate, oh, I know the story I was going to tell you. So I'd be ramming around Costa Rica, checking out the bar scene, and I'd eat in bars a lot because the prepared food was very reasonable. And I also, there in Escazú, there was several gringo bars that I would go to from time to time, although I used to go to the native bars, the Tika bars, but regardless, I got to know a lot of expats down there, and it was amazing to me the number of unemployed guys down in Costa Rica who were receiving unemployment and or had gotten disability and were living down in Costa Rica. They were separated from their wives, and they were, a lot of them in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, and they're down in Costa Rica on the government dime, and they're going to whorehouses all the time and doinking 18-year-old girls and spending their afternoons in a bar. A lot of these old gringos, expats from the USA, would be drunk by 3 in the afternoon, and all of them down there just milking off the government. I'm not saying all of them were, but I can guarantee you I met a lot of old gringos down there in Costa Rica and Nicaragua who were basically on a government-sponsored drunk and regular visits to the whorehouse, all on Uncle Sam. I mean, they were full on scamming the system. All right, that's it for that. All right, you're listening to the Trailer Park Prophet. My name is Daniel Gray. We're broadcasting live on Blog Talk Radio. Better go to my studio, make sure everything is operating great. This is Local Friday, where we look under the hood of one local government or another, because, like I always say, all politics is local. Now, look, if you want to call into the show, that would be turbo cool. I don't see... Search callers. I guess I should put something in here. OBAMA. Huh. All right. Let's go to Gunnison, Colorado. I actually have the Gunnison Country Times right in front of me. And it's your basic progressive socialist yellow rag. I just despise this paper on so many levels. It's just so phony. I mean, and I know this is probably the case with most regional newspapers, but I've always had a good, healthy disdain for the press, for politicians, lawyers, but particularly newspapers, because there are guidelines to being a journalist that rarely do any newspapers follow. They're more into propaganda and more importantly, lying by omission. And that's how I see the Gunnison Country Times, and that's why we talk about this kind of stuff, because it's important that people begin to recognize that their newspapers are merely a reflection of their editors or publishers' worldview. And I know most of you know that. I understand that. But gosh, it gives me the impetus to always maintain disdain in my heart towards anyone that runs a newspaper or television station or radio station, for crying out loud. But this article here is written by Chris Rourke. He is a Gunnison Country Times staff writer, or as I like to call the Gunnison Country Times, the Gunnison Country Times Dead Tree News. I still find it hilarious that all these progressive socialists that take over newspapers are in the business of killing trees. But this article is, like I said, written by Chris Rourke, Times staff writer. Headline is Bearing the Torch for Reform. Immigrant group urges Congress to pass legislative fix. Cynthia Sanez wanted a better life. She lived in constant fear of her own life and for that of her daughters. So 10 years ago, she set out to find a better life, leaving behind her home in Mexico. Sanez traveled to the United States on a visa, but when that visa expired, she did not want to return to her homeland. Mexico, she says, is a place marred by violence, a place unsafe for herself and her children. Now she is one of the 11 million people in the United States without documentation. She says, here your children can go to school and they know they are coming back. In Mexico, your daughter goes to school and you don't know if she's coming back. Now, I know this Cynthia Sanez. It's spelled S-A-E-N-S. I know her when I was living in Gunnison. She worked at a place where I worked, a motel, and I worked with her on a regular basis. And she is a pretty decent person. But who I don't like in this story is Chris Rourke. This is an example of propaganda. Because this is presented, this story that we're going to talk a little bit about here is presented as news. And it's propaganda because there are two sides of this immigration story. Now, Chris O'Rourke doesn't realize that because Chris O'Rourke or Chris Dickey, the guy that owns the newspaper, are not journalists. Not by any stretch of the imagination is Chris Rourke or Chris Dickey journalist. They are in the tank for the progressive socialist movement. They don't see immigration as a situation where there's a diversity of opinion, sort of a yin and yang. They don't treat this story as a news story. They just treat it as indoctrination and as fuel for their sycophant friends. I know this woman, and she makes it out as if, she's a victim. And 11 million, I will propose to you, as I have on other occasion, is nowhere near the number of illegal immigrants to this country. Nowhere near. I think it's closer to 20 million, maybe 30 million. I've seen accounts that say that it's as high as 40 million illegal aliens in this country, for starters. But here they're doing this special piece about this woman. And they don't do any background check to Mexico to find out, okay, does this woman by any chance have a criminal background? I mean, they don't do anything to check out her story. All they do is paint her as a victim, and anybody that disagrees with them is somehow against this poor little old woman trying to make a living for her family. And I can tell you, I know this family, and this woman is an older woman, and she has something like 6 kids. This woman has a baby. And she talks about in this story about how her daughter's in high school, and she doesn't mention that this woman also has an infant. So she came to the USA with the intent of deceiving the United States of America by getting pregnant in this country and having anchor babies. We're not supposed to say anchor babies, but this is exactly what this woman had in mind. She intentionally broke the law, overstayed her visa, and then intentionally skirts the law to keep herself here, basically self-immigrating, and then she makes out everyone who's against her as somehow being inhumane. And not only this woman, I know this for a fact, that daughter that she talked about that's in high school, I'm not going to say her name on the radio. Her oldest daughter was raped by one of Mrs. Sanez's live-in boyfriends. She came home and saw her daughter strapped over the kitchen table getting humped by her second or third husband, or boyfriend du jour. And the guy is sitting in a Gunnison jail right now as we speak. And there's been at least 3 that I can think of, illegal alien men that have been caught having sex with underage Mexican women that are in jail right now in Gunnison County. And you don't see that in this article, and you don't see that in this newspaper. Because we're not told what crime's going on in the county and who's in our damn jail that we have to pay for. And a lot of it are illegal aliens. And several of them I know are related to Sanez. In fact, if you look into Sanez's background, there's a criminal element to this woman and criminal element involved with her history in Gunnison. But yet all of this is institutionalized. I mean, she's got the full faith. I mean, listen to this. As Sanez joined about 40 supporters of immigrants, Indus de Gunnison, who gathered on a cold, snowy evening this past Friday for a Virgil, in Gunnison's Oddfellows Park. The local organization is an offshoot of the Hispanic Affairs Project, HAP, and part of a web of Colorado organizations advocating for immigration reform. And all of those organizations are operating under 501 status. And so we are de facto paying for these people to be out in support of lawbreakers. Basically, I mean, this group of people, these groups of people are nothing but lawbreakers. And it says the group gathered under spotlights, holding signs and the American flags while the snow fell. They were showing support for legislation currently before the U.S. House of Representatives that they say will help undocumented residents achieve a speedy legal status. And then they also want to send a message to Representative Scott Tippin, who does not currently support the legislation. He is one of the 3 congressmen from Colorado who do not. And like, here's one of the reasons why they think that there should be immigration reform. And we don't need immigration reform. What we need is to have the laws we have passed enforced, which this president isn't doing. And why the border guard union, the border guard union has taken the Obama administration to court, because they're telling these border agents to disobey the law. They're disobeying federal law and not enforcing our border security because they're being told to by the Obama administration. And it says here, quote, people will be able to drive legally, to work legally, to pay their taxes and get something for the taxes they pay, she said. To become a citizen is a very lengthy process, so at least if they are here legally and are not afraid of being deported, they can work. But let's see, where's this one line I want to read? Well, I remember the line, but at any rate, they talk about how all these people, all they want to do is work, and they do the work that Americans don't want to do, which is a pile of metabolic waste. I know there's plenty of women in Gunnison who would rather clean rooms than be on food stamps. And quite frankly, since the Obama administration has made it easier for people to get on food stamps and other aid, why in the hell would anyone want to work? It's a disincentive. You know, it's like running over somebody's dog and then saying you're sorry that their dog died. That's what the government's doing. It's taking away the incentive for people to work. And then it says, well, nobody wants to do these jobs, and then these illegals come in. And it's profoundly racist, because really that's a racist remark, and you hear this all the time. They say, well, these illegal aliens are doing the jobs other people don't want to do, but really what they're saying is these Mexicans are doing jobs these gringos don't want to do. That's really the essence of that remark, that illegals are doing the jobs that Americans won't do. That's basically what they're saying. And I disagree with that. I think that if people were having to work, needed to work, that they would go out and do whatever they could. And that's part of what John Kennedy was saying. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And what you could do for your country rather than get on food stamps is maybe go and clean some rooms. Maybe you'll realize that that isn't the life you want to lead, and make yourself work to get something else. But to suggest that white people basically don't want to do hard manual labor is totally BS. And a lot of these jobs that these illegal aliens take are jobs that ironically white people normally would have. And the ones I'm speaking of are in construction, in concrete, in building, in framing. All the industry, the construction industry used to be where a guy could go get a good job, make a really good wage, and be outside and build things and have a good life. But thanks to a lot of the illegal immigrants, they're taking all of those construction jobs, or a lot of those construction jobs. And they drive the price of wages down. And all of these assholes out there who hire illegal aliens, I want to tell you something. It's unpatriotic to hire illegal aliens because you're not paying the taxes that a legal worker would have to pay into FICA. You're not paying those taxes on those illegal immigrants. You're ripping off the system. And you're making the taxpayers pick up the bill for all of the health care and daycare and food stamps for all the illegal aliens. And that's the other thing, too. It kind of relates to another story. It was on my Facebook page. Who was it? Was saying that Walmart has the biggest percentage or somehow there's a big percentage of people that work at Walmart who are getting food stamps or some kind of Medicaid and stuff like that. And I say, well, at least Walmart is paying the FICA taxes on these individuals, whereas all the people, all the businesses out there hiring illegals, they're not paying FICA tax. And it's not in this article. This article has no bearing on reality. This article, and I'm sure this is reminiscent of articles everywhere in the United States, there's no alternative viewpoint. There's absolutely no suggestion that there's any other viewpoint. They do bring up Congressman Tipton, but they don't necessarily explain why Tipton is against this bill. The bill that came over from the Senate. The Senate passed an immigration reform bill, and it's in the House. Now, here's something here. This is a quote. Get a load of this. This woman is big in Gunnison in terms of we have in Gunnison, I'm sure you have this in your community too, we have the Multicultural Center that's paid for by county and city sales tax, which is nothing more than a welcome center for illegal aliens. All you got to do is go to the Multicultural Center and they'll make sure you get housing and food allowance and employment, and there's daycare for all the illegals, and it just goes on and on and on. It's all paid for by taxpayers. Now, this woman, her name is Ellen Pedersen. Listen to this. She says, these people are hardworking and many have been here for years, said Ellen Pedersen, who is the health navigator for Gunnison County's Multicultural Resources Office. Pedersen works closely with government or Gunnison's Hispanic community. Quote, they contribute to the community, she said. They have jobs and clean our hotels and do all the jobs Americans don't want to do. And she went on to say, Pedersen explained how many immigrant families live in limbo, unwilling to leave America but unable to live here freely. Quote, some people are constantly worried about being deported, Pedersen said. If they get a traffic ticket, a family can end up being separated. Yeah, but see, that's not true either, because obviously the writer, Chris O'Rourke, doesn't know what he's talking about. I talk to these Mexican families all the time. And what happens if they do get picked up on a traffic violation, they get shipped to Denver from Gunnison, Colorado, and then they're turned loose. And they have to find their way back to Gunnison. So, obviously, Chris O'Rourke doesn't know jack about what goes on in the streets there, which I'm not surprised. But she goes on to say, this Pedersen, she believes bringing undocumented people out of the shadows and giving them the opportunity to remain in this country legally would permanently dispel that pervasive fear. She described how it just goes on to say. But I was going to read here, that girl that got raped by the stepfather, the actual subject of this article. I'll tell you her name. Her name's Melina. She says, it gives me hope, who is currently a senior at Gunnison High School. My junior year, I basically gave up. That was the year she got raped. I thought, why am I studying? Why am I doing this if I can't go further on with my studies? I shut doors on myself. But then the DAACA came out. It gave me hope. That was the executive order by President Obama, the DREAM Act. But what a crock. It's just totally a crock. And it's all about emotion. Oh, these poor illegals. And they broke the law to get here or to stay here. And now they're playing the victim card. I'm so sick of the victim card. Oh, this is big news in Gunnison. The Bureau of Land Management imposes shooting ban. Recreation and target shooting off limits for now due to safety considerations and following a public process. The Bureau of Land Management Gunnison Field Office is temporarily closed an area in the Hartman Rocks recreation area to recreational target shooting. The temporary closure will help protect persons, property, and public lands until shooting issues are fully analyzed and the consideration through the Resource Management Amendment, a period not expected to exceed 2 years. So some of my homeboys in Gunnison are going to be hopping mad about this. And I don't see here in the article exactly what their rationale for closing down the shooting ranges on BLM property, but I can guarantee you some of my Mountain Billy friends are going to be hotter than hell. Chris Dickey wrote an article about physical education more than fun and games. He had trees killed in his name so that he could talk about something that really doesn't have much to do about anything, but that's what we get from Chris Dickey. All right, let's see what else. There's rumors about the ski area in Crested Butte being sold. Let's see. I think that's pretty much it for local news from Gunnison, Colorado. I'm trying to think if I have any other local news. From Delta, no. From Crested Butte, no. Crestone. I don't have any news here in Crestone. Lots going on, though. Oh, I got some news. I was talking to Steve McDowell. He is a big-time businessman here in Crested Butte. And Crested Butte is only a town of about 100 people. And then there's a big subdivision to the south called the Baca. And there's probably 1,000 homes out there. And he was telling me here recently that the town of Crestone and all of Swatch County in Colorado got reassessed because the local assessor, the county assessor, has not been doing her job, and so she's kind of behind the times. But they built this, or they're in the process of building this huge office building in Gunnison, the town of 100 people, 2-story affair with a parking garage. And if you look on the internet and look at Crestone, you can see that this building is kind of way out of character. But at any rate, these people are building it. I imagine it's worth millions. But the problem that my friend Steve McDowell was telling me is that the building got assessed before it got built, and it's going to drive up everybody's property taxes. And it was because of the way they assessed the property and not using comps from the area, because there's no comparable building in the area to this one that's being built. And my friend Steve McDowell, he owns a grocery store, a real growing concern, something that he started from scratch, and his property taxes have been normally $5,000 a year. And now, because of the new evaluation and assessment from the county, his taxes are going to be $20,000 a year, from $5,000 to $20,000. So Steve McDowell and some others are taking the county to court. But he was telling me that this is the case all over Colorado, that these assessors have seen a drop in their tax revenue, and so they're tightening down their enforcement, and they're looking for little glitches. And this is what happens in a down economy. The government becomes strapped for money, and what they end up doing is going after the taxpayer. Obviously, they're the ones that have the money. But he said that this is happening all over the state of Colorado, and there's a lot of people in Colorado that are having to defend themselves from the tax ban, basically, is what's going on. But I was really nice talking to Steve McDowell. He's a really interesting guy. And he told me also that things around here in Crestone aren't doing very well, that a lot of people are cutting back on lavish expenses, or cutting back where they can cut back. And he's saying, you know, when you run a grocery store, you get a real feel for the economy and what people feel like they can afford to buy. And he said that a lot of people are really, really hurting, not only in Crestone, he said all across the state and also across the country. He said everyone he's talked to has said the same thing, that everyone is hurting in America, that people are, at least in his anecdotal experience, that there's a lot more people on food stamps. And he also said that his theft is way up. And Steve McDowell just said, you know, people just don't have money to eat. And I've seen that in my walks around Crestone. I've only been back a couple days, but I've been walking every day with my best friend Bailey Barker, and we've been checking out Crestone and the forest that surrounds Crestone, and there are people living in cars, living in tents, sleeping out on the ground. I've seen several illegal structures, I guess you'd call them, more of the walled permanent tents that people are living in. I saw people living in a bus, and I can see that because that's what I was seeing in Delta, Colorado, where I just came from. I didn't talk a lot about it because I don't know. But yeah, when Bailey and I were doing our walk in Delta, Colorado, we were on this huge park called Confluence Park, where the Gunnison River and the Colorado hook up. And there was 3 different camps of homeless people that were living in this park, and we would walk right by them. And my thought is that there's people living out on the streets and people out living in the forest probably all over the country, and I would imagine that there's more people now that are living in the forest or the woods than ever before, at least since the last Great Depression. I mean, that's I don't know that, but that's my feeling. But it was interesting listening to Steve McDowell. He definitely has his finger on the pulse of the community. All right, let's see here. What do I want to do next? Oh, speaking of immigration, what a crock. What a crock. I mean, progressive socialists don't want to admit the cost to society for illegal immigration. And in this instance, in Gunnison, the prison's practically filled up with illegal aliens committing crimes. I mean, if you were to do a basic statistical analysis of illegals in this country that committed crime, and you compare that to people who would knowingly commit a crime by entering another person's country, what are the chances that a person that will break the laws of a country and come to their country illegally, what are the chances that that same person or that same type of person that would break that law wouldn't also be a criminal? And my guess is that there's a lot of similarities between a person that will break an immigration law and will break other laws after they're here. I bet there's a correlation there. Oh, no, I don't want to do that story. I do want to do part of this story, actually. I know sometimes I get into the weeds, maybe a little too much, but I know it's important to talk about things in the context of process I do a lot of discussion about the legislative process because I know it's not being taught in the schools, and I think it's important to understand the process and how the process is supposed to work, how it's intended to work, and of course we wind up reporting on instances when the process has been violated. And this is a time when the process is being violated. And in case you don't know, there's a rule in the Senate in regards to the right and the ability of the minority to filibuster a issue and or nomination. And the Republicans, as you probably know, are in the minority in the U.S. Senate. I believe there's 45 Republicans and 50, or maybe there's 40 Republicans and 60 Democrats. I can't remember the breakout, but it's close to that. And so the Republicans, being in the minority, have a procedural rule to hold up nominations. And what's happening now is that the Democrats are going to break the rules in order to get the nomination approval of several of Obama's appointments in front of the Senate for an up or down vote. And the irony is that the Republicans talked about doing this in 2005, and here's what then U.S. Senator Barack Hussein Obama said. He said, "One day Democrats will be in the majority again, and this rule change will be no fairer to the Republican minority than it is to the Democratic minority." And so now in 2003, President Obama says, "I support the step a majority of senators today took to change the way Washington is doing business." So he said one thing as a U.S. Senator in 2005 and does exactly the opposite in 2013. Which prompted me to say, I think I did that here. But at any rate, it just demonstrates what a hypocrite President Obama or Barack Hussein Obama is. He said one thing to get elected and does another when he governs. And I said that progressive socialists are oblivious to irony and hypocrisy. Any normal person would be embarrassed if they were caught in a situation like this with President Obama. But this man knows no irony. He has no shame. He doesn't understand the hypocrisy. He's totally oblivious. And yet, it's so clear to the objective observer. And the lamestream media does nothing. And that's because President Obama's their guy. Okay, what was this? Here's my friend Kevin McGarry. He was beside himself today. Let's see if I want to do this piece he put in there. Well, he's talking about Obamacare, and he called the Progressive Socialists or the Democratic Party, he called them hypocritic oafs. Oafs. He says it is quite cynical and purely, hypocritical when we were lied to about Obamacare being designed to help 15 to 20 million medically uncovered poor. The fact is, there were already programs designed to help the poor, like Medicaid and Medi-Cal, and we also have the same kind of thing in Colorado. With that in mind, we should intently review outcomes Obamacare has had to date on the poor to confirm its supposition. Obamacare mandates new regulations on employers. This has precipitated a dramatic increase in unemployment. High unemployment disproportionately harms the poor. the underemployed, and those who are marginally or lower educated. Obamacare dutifully forces them into perpetual dependence on the government. Does increased government dependence help the poor? Obamacare has drastically increased part-time jobs that were historically full-time jobs. Now jobs are being permanently reclassified as part-time as employers strategically design part-time forces to cope with the dramatically increased health care cost. Does this help the poor? More pervasive, Obamacare increases health care costs for everyone, and these increased costs forces many off any health care. It is projected over 30 million people will opt for no coverage, with a net increase of over 10 million more uninsured. Does this help anyone, including the poor? To summarize, actual Obamacare outcomes reflect taking over the entire U.S. healthcare system and turning it upside down under the lies of helping 15 to 20 million people, but it actually increases the number of uninsured to over 30 million. Meanwhile, other documented Obamacare outcomes are it increases spending, debt, and deficits, increases unemployment, increases perpetual generational poverty, and it fully transitions most jobs to permanent part-time. Now part-time workers massively outpace workers. Do you see the hypocrisy? If you don't see the diabolical, sinister, and wholly irrational hypocrisy of Obamacare, congratulations, you are definitely a hypocritical oaf indeed. And Kevin McGarry, I might point out, is a black intellectual, and he is beside himself over the impending disaster that is Obamacare. It truly is going to hurt a lot of people. I mean, it's amazing what's going on in this country. Okay, I guess I should do a station ID. My name's Daniel Gray. I am the TrailerPark Prophet, and we're broadcasting live on Blog Talk Radio. From Crestone, Colorado, this is Local Friday. And we're just talking about... I haven't talked a lot about this, but this new federal program, Common Core, have you heard of it? It's been getting a lot of attention from the conservatives and Tea Parties and people who greatly resent being told how to educate our kids and live our lives. But it's called Common Core, and it's an attempt to create a countrywide curriculum, basically, and take the control out of local school boards' ability to set the curriculum. That's basically what this is. And basically what this is more increased socialization of our K through 12 education system. That's basically what this is. This is a one-size-fits-all, big box control of every single school from sea to shining sea in the United States of America. And what it says here is Common Core book teaches children white voters rejected Obama because of race. Fourth graders in DuPont, Illinois are reading a biography of Barack Obama by author Jane Sutcliffe. The book teaches children that white voters rejected Obama because of race. What absolute BS. The book brought to the attention this week of those on the Moms Against Dukan, MAD, goes on to say that white Americans were hesitant to vote for a black president and that Obama pushed the race issue to bring the nation together. Quote, but some people said Americans weren't ready for that much change. Sure, Barack was a nice fellow, they said, but white voters would never vote for a black president. After angry voices were raised, Barack's former pastor called the country a failure. God would damn the United States for mistreating its black citizens, he said. And yet nothing in this textbook has any mention that Barack Obama would have never been elected president had it not been for a majority of white voters voting for him. They don't say that. The Buckview Elementary students were told the book's content would be tested for grades. That brought... All right, enough of that. But, Jesus. Really? I mean, that's how dedicated the progressive socialist movement is, man. They are on it day and night. Relentless. Okay, we talked about the knockout game. Now there's more and more stories all across the U.S. where gangs of roving black teenagers are looking for solo white victims to come up behind them and knock them out cold. There's cases sprouting up all over the country, and there's been 2 cases, or at least one, where one of these roving bands of black teenagers approached a victim and the victim shot him. I think there's been a death already. And here's something that's kind of interesting, and this is what I was talking about as far as white guilt, the culture of guilt. This young girl, she got punched out by one of these, a white girl got punched out by one of these roving gangs of black teens, and she developed kind of a Stockholm syndrome, you know, where the captive, the kidnapped person begins to take on the persona and opinions of their captors. Stockholm syndrome. Now this poor girl, she got punched in the head, gives same liberal speech humanizing her attackers. Now we have this on YouTube, and let's just, here, let me set this up a little bit. She was on Fox News. Her name is Phoebe Conley, who was punched in the face and laughed at by a group of teenagers playing the random and sometimes fatal knockout game in my own obscenity terrible neighborhood of Columbia Heights in Washington, D.C., appeared with Greta Van Susteren Wednesday night to describe her ordeal. She said, I've moved past it, and I really have no hard feelings about what happened, and I just see it as another reason why we need to better support our youth with activities and youth programs, which is actually what I do for work, and it's great to see teenagers do incredible things when they're supposed to be supported and empowered. And she went on to say, now this woman was attacked, blindsided by one of these roving gangs. She says, yeah, those kids didn't seem at all empowered. For the record, this woman got viciously punched in the head for no apparent reason. She also lives in a crappy apartment like many of us in this economy, according to the background of her on Skype shot. And yet she still holds the kind of liberal guilt that convinces her against all evidence to the contrary that she is indefinitely more privileged than the vicious teenagers who inexplicably assaulted her in an act of pure evil. She still cannot say something along the lines of, put these kids in jail and throw away the key. And I think this Phoebe is emblematic of a lot of white people in the United States who quite frankly feel like they've got it coming. They have this original sin, this original white guilt. And I find this profound. I mean, if someone did this to me, I'd be angry. And I'd want to see these kids behind bars, but not for this woman. She evidently feels that, you know, because she's white, she had it coming. And here's another George Orwell. It says, I think this is George Orwell. Truth. The new hate speech. Political correctness is destroying the very fabric of society. Never before in history have people been so afraid to stand up against absurdity for fear of being labeled a racist, a homophobe, or a bigot. Get rid of political correctness. Let's get people talking again. And that's the sad thing right now is under Obama, and we've documented this, that more people now think that the races are more divided since we've had the transitional president, Barack Hussein Obama. Actually, I've read scientific polls that suggest that the gap between blacks and white is bigger now than it has ever been in the history of the U.S., or at least the modern U.S. And the numbers I looked at were from the 90s till now. And if I remember correctly, there was something like 20%, 30% of the people polled back in the 90s felt like we still had racial division. It was in the 20s or 30s. And now, under Obama, the transformative president, 70% of our society thinks that race relations are worse than they were. 70% think it's worse now than what they thought back in the 90s. Okay, this is kind of interesting. A 3% tax on tea, talking about our revolutionary history, a 3% tax on tea eventually led to the American Revolution. Now you pay up to 70% of your earnings to a de facto corporate government. You are groped at the airport, surveilled on the street, spied on in your own home, fed propaganda by the media, lied to by your representatives, have your rights eroded, your currency devalued, and are on the verge of a overt police state. WTF happened to home of the brave and land of the free? I'll tell you what happened to it. People are scared. People don't want to speak out against town hall. People don't want to be heard. They don't want to be known about. They eventually are in limbo. Everyone is afraid of the government. I don't think there's any question about that. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Stop script. Oh, wait, let me make sure everything's okay here. Make sure we don't have any callers. All right, we got another 12 minutes left in the program. We don't have any callers. And I have a bunch of stories I want to do, but I want to do this one in particular. Let's see if I can find it. I can't do that one. Oh, I'd like to do those. I'm looking for this one in particular. Okay, I want to do that one, Iran. We should have enough time to do one more story on Iran. God, there's a lot of stuff I can't do today. Just not enough time. Oh, another story. You may have seen this one of a school bus, and it was a beatdown of this white student by these black students on the school bus. I can't remember where it is, but this is the second time where a white kid has gotten beat down on a school bus by black kids. The second time, white kid beat down by blacks. And still, not a peep out of Al Sharpton. Not a peep. Where's Al Sharpton? Where's Jesse Jackson? And I'm telling you, every week there's one or two stories about blacks beating down whites. I mean, there is an epidemic again in this country of black on white violence. And it's been nothing but silence from the left. Here's another picture of a girl who was knocked down in the knockout game. Oh, here, this is the one. Victim turns table on attackers. And I didn't read the story, but evidently she pulled a gun on him. Good for her. All right, that's not the question. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Well, no, I don't. I guess I'm going to do this story. Although this isn't really the story I want to do. This is still a pretty good story. Did you hear about Oprah Winfrey? She was over in Europe promoting her new movie, and she had something really outrageous to say. And basically, she was asked the question on British TV whether or not she felt that some of the criticism of Barack Obama has been because of racism, and she meaning Oprah Winfrey, basically said that she felt like, yeah, that was the case, that people that are against President Obama are do so because they're racist. And she said something to the effect that the only way that you're going to get rid of racism in the USA is if a bunch of these old rednecks actually up and die. And this is Oprah Winfrey, who is one of the richest people on planet Earth, because white people in droves have supported her career. And she has the unmitigated gall to go to a foreign country and suggest that the USA is a racist nation. And then, on the heels of that, on November 20th, Obama gives Oprah Winfrey the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the country's highest civilian honor. She gets that on the 20th after she derides our country. She gets this from the President of the United States after she went overseas and derided our country as a racist nation. She gets the Medal of Freedom. I mean, what are you thinking? And it's obvious they don't give a cahootie what people out here in mainstream America really think. All right. I was disappointed in Oprah. You know, I used to always get Oprah's magazine when I flew on a plane because it's done brilliantly. There's good writing. And I'll never do anything again to help Oprah Winfrey. Oh, and that same day, what a joke. President Obama also gives the Medal of Freedom, a tribute to President Kennedy at the Medal of Freedom ceremony, to not only Oprah Winfrey, but also Bill Clinton got the Medal of Freedom medal too. And who is Bill Clinton? But he is a serial sexual harasser. His whole career he's been harassing females. You don't believe me? Google it. I mean, the guy he's a sexual predator. Bill Clinton's a sexual predator. And he gets the Medal of Freedom award. Amazing. And here's what Doreen Bernelli said. Doreen Borelli is a black conservative woman. And this is what she says of Oprah getting the Medal of Honor. She says, Oprah has lost it. She's black and she's a billionaire. You have Obama, who's black. He's the president of the United States. How racist could our country be? Oprah's a bitter billionaire who is really backstabbing Americans who have put her on the map. Exactly. Let's see, we got 8 minutes. Okay, let's do this story. This is kind of fun. This isn't the story I was looking for, but hopefully I'll remember and do it again. I know I owe you. I forgot I never did that one video from the Reverend who he's a black Reverend, and he did this piece called What Every White Person Needs to Know. I'll try to remember to do that on Monday. That would be a lot of fun. But this is kind of interesting too. Now, this comes from the Western Center for Journalism, and these people appear to be very serious people. But The headline is Obama classmate. He was a lying, drug-using homosexual foreigner. This woman, her name is Mia Marie Pope, who was a high school friend of Barack Obama, a.k.a. Barry Soetoro. That's the name that Barack used in Hawaii, Barry Soetoro. During the 70s, says that Obama identified himself as a foreigner in high school and was known as a crack-smoking homosexual. And we don't have time to listen to it, but at any rate, this is a story. It's with the Western Center for Journalism, and then this black preacher I was telling you about. He actually did the interview with this woman. But I'm telling you that there's a lot of stories out there that Barry Obama is a homosexual. That story is out there. It's everywhere, I'm telling you. There's this one guy named, let's see if I can remember. Oh, I already told you that story. Anyways, you can find it on your own. Oh, and get a load of this. Here's a congressman that was under attack by a gang of teenagers that were playing knockout. And her name is Grace Ming, a Democrat from New York. Congressman attacked in D.C. may have been victim of deadly knockout game. So now, they're getting bolder all the time. Police examples of troubling knockout game popping up all over. This was on CBS News. Thugs target Jews in sick knockout game. I mean, these stories now are everywhere. 68-year-old Midwood woman becomes latest victim in game of knockout. Man, just craziness, man. I don't get it. Oh, this is a story I wanted to do. Now, I've heard this for a long time, so I'm not really sure what to think. And it is from clashdaily.com. But this story, here it is right here. Let's listen to this video. It says here that, well, basically what this story is about. We talked about Bill Ayers. Remember we did that video the other day? Well, it came out here recently that Bill Ayers, he was with the Weather Underground. We talked about how he was a college professor, and before that he was with the Weather Underground, and that he was indicted on conspiracy and also was involved with the Weather Underground blowing up federal buildings and stuff. It says here, Bill Ayers reportedly reveals that he is the author of Dreams of My Father. In the latest book, Flashback to 2/11, author Jack Caswell documented his theses in Deconstructing Obama. Caswell explains that Obama does not possess the understanding or skills to author Dreams from My Father. However, the book writing style is remarkably similar to works from Bill Ayers. Jack Caswell offers a full and fascinating discussion along with questions and answers on the topic at this C-SPAN video, and you can go to my Facebook page and look it up. But this has been out there that Bill Ayers actually did write President Obama's book, and now he's pretty much saying that in this guy's new upcoming book, and this is getting out there, and you can only imagine that this has got the Obama administration a little miffed at Bill Ayers. And I don't know if you've read that book, Dreams from My Father. It is written. It is written pretty good, but Obama's always said that he wrote that book, and it's becoming more and more apparent that that may not exactly be the case. All right, everybody. You know what time it is? Drizzle, drazzle, drizzle, drone. Time for this prophet to go home. Thanks, everybody. Have any kind of weekend you want. We'll see you on Monday.
60 seconds.
I gotta love you. Thanks for being here. Bye, everybody. You know who loves you. The Trailer Park Prophet, live from Crestone, Colorado. Adios, gringos.